Catfish, some of the largest fish in the state of Kansas, with the state record being a blue catfish that weighed in at just over 102 pounds. This catfish was caught by Robert and Stephanie Stanley, and in the strip pits of southeast Kansas, they move stealthily. My name is Corbin Kinch, and this is my journey in catching a southeast monster. My journey starts with my friend Jack. He invited me out to catch these deep water beasts on property where he grew up. It wasn't easy getting out there with my little sports car, and even after getting lost here and there, I eventually made it to the property. This is my friend Jack. He has been catching catfish his whole life and absolutely loves it. The first thing we had to do was gather bait to catch these catfish. The bait, large and smallmouth bass. Jack pulled up his boat and we filled the live well with our bait. And headed off that way. The strip pit we are heading to was a runoff called Lightning Creek, the same one he had grown up fishing his whole life. Once we arrived, Jack reversed the boat into the water and let me give it a spin. We stopped the boat at a fork in the pit. Jack explained that the best way to go about catching them was using a limb line on the banks of the strip pits. After driving the boat a little further up, we hit our first limb line. The process to setting this up was taking the hook that was hung on top down, then hooking our bait, releasing it slowly. I grabbed the first bait and watched how Jack hooked the fish. Hooking the bass in the spine instead of the eyes allows the fish to freely swim, making the bait look more lively for the catfish. After baiting the first limb line, Jack and I baited the lines up and down the entire north side of Lightning Creek. It wasn't long after we had baited all the limb lines that we started to head back. On our way, I asked Jack about how the strip pits were formed, and he said they were made by a huge electric shovel by the name of Big Brutus. However, he said the best person to talk to wasn't him, but rather his father's best friend, Ronnie, who owned the land and knew a whole lot more about the history of these pits than he did. So I sat down to talk with Ronnie about the history of these deep catfish-infested strip pits.
Well, I'm a outdoorsman, number one. I've had a lot of businesses, in electric business, cannabis business, and convenience store business. So, just done a lot of things in my life.
Can you tell me about Big Brutus?
Big Brutus was huge for this area because they came in, they dug all these, stripping for coal, and they made excellent fishing habitat and all that. My dad actually worked on that. My father-in-law worked on it. So it's got a lot of memory to it. That was back in the day when those guys really had to work hard to keep that shovel going. But they dug these pits in here where I'm talking about. Actually, there's a creek over here that it's called Lightning Creek, and it was just a small creek. Well, they came in and dug coal on the east side of it, and they dug them so deep that they were having trouble with flooding, so they steered that little creek into the strip pits. So that's where I catch my flathead, because the Neosho River comes back into it when it raises, and it's a sanctuary for the flathead, because on the river you don't have 30 foot of water. We got 30 foot of water on this creek.
Early the next morning, Ronnie took me out on his boat to catch more bait for the days ahead. His boat was fast and got us to our fishing spot faster than I've ever gone in a fishing boat. We started to go through a new excavated spot in the pit where they were combining two of the largest strip pits in the county. With that being said, he further explained that with that change, they now have the largest strip pit in all the area. We continued past the joint and found a spot to fish. After fishing for 30 minutes, we caught a lot of fish and had enough bait to start heading back to Jack. Once we were back, Jack and I hopped into our vehicles and made our way down to Lightning Creek. Today was a big day. With high doses of adrenaline, we set off on the boat to our first limb line. The first line we checked turned into a disappointment because the bait had either gotten off or the catfish ate the bait and swam off. However, we didn't let the first line get to us. We kept a positive attitude and made our way to the second line. As I reached down to feel if we had one on the line, Jack wasn't certain there was one on, but it proved to be false. We had our first southeast monster. The excitement I felt in that moment was like no other. After pulling the hook out, we celebrated for a second and moved on to our next line. This time I felt the line move, and sure enough, another monster catfish.
That's a lot bigger than I thought.
With two monsters caught, we checked our third line, which actually still had a bass on the hook, but the bass had shown that he was in a fight or was possibly swallowed by a catfish, and then spit back up. After taking this bass off the hook, we released him and continued on our way. Up to this moment, I thought we had caught some monster catfish from what I knew to be a monster. However, what was about to happen, neither Jack nor I were prepared for the size of catfish we were about to catch.
Hopefully we have two.
This was a channel catfish, which weighed in at 35 pounds. The ironic thing was after checking the state record for the largest channel catfish, which was 36.5 pounds, we were off by just 1.6 pounds from breaking the Kansas record.
That thing is huge. I would have just pulled. I don't trust that hook.
Oh my goodness.
That is huge.
However, after being giddy and knowing we had a monster in our boat, we kept checking lines. The rest actually didn't have any catfish besides the last limb line.
Yep.
Knowing we had a catfish on the line, Jack pulled in the final one and we called it a day. When we arrived back on shore, we stored the catfish in the bait box to keep these monsters alive. Jack then invited me back to see the process of cleaning these fish the next day. What Jack's dad is doing here is the most humane way of killing and cleaning a catfish. Jack explained to me that the way they've always have cleaned catfish was by hanging them by the lip on a large nail that's hammered into the tree. Jack's dad then showed me the steps in filleting and cleaning the first couple catfish. After he explained the process to me, he grabbed the 35-pound monster. After knocking it out and hanging it on the tree, next was cutting the tail off to let the blood pour out. Without blood, the muscles in the catfish don't tense up when filleting. After the blood has drained, it's now time to fillet the first half of the fish. He inserts the knife and starts from the neck down to the tail, making sure the knife is as close to the spine as possible to ensure he's getting all the meat off. After repeating the process on the same side, he takes the fillets and washes them off. Their family loves using mostly all of the catfish. So the next thing to fillet is the belly meat. Jack's dad added that this is the most tender and savory meat on the entire fish. After filleting the belly meat, he washed it off and brought me over to the fine cut station. He explained to me that folding the belly in half over the knife is the easiest way to smoothly cut without chopping the meat up. He used an electric knife to fillet, which is the fastest way to cut the fish. Next was separating the meat from the skin, in which he did flawlessly. Then onto the fillet, the largest meat from the fish. The same process is used and is done near perfect every time. After that, it was on to cutting the fillets up into little chunks for people to eat.
Bags in a day or so, and I'll get a piece of fish too.
Oh,
I'll take it home and really soak it out for 24 hours. Then I'll put it in Ziploc bags and freeze.
Oh, I appreciate that. About the size of a granola bar were these fillets. After we got done with that, I noticed that Jack was picking up trash from one of the sides of the strip pits. After he was finished, we all pitched in together to clean up. We had to clean the knife, the buckets, and the bench. After cleanup was done, we put the rest of the fish in a cooler. Jack then asked if I wanted to enjoy the cooked catfish at their family Halloween party, to which I said yes. When I arrived, his grandma and her sisters had costumes and were the life of the party. What I really wanted to see was the catfish, and sure enough, they were frying them outside, getting them prepared for the guests. The catfish complemented the rest of the food, in which smelled amazing. There was nothing like eating the southeast monster that you caught a few days earlier. Overall, I had an amazing experience getting out and understanding the process of how Jack and his family caught these southeast monsters. I am so thankful that Jack invited me out and that we caught one of the largest southeast monsters recorded at their strip pits. Thank you, Jack, Jack Sr., and Ronnie for giving me an experience like no other in Southeast Kansas.